Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. If there's anyone out there at all, this is the Body, Mind, and Soul Show with Ava live. I realized that something went wrong with my notification that was displayed next to the live. It was displaying the wrong time. So there may not be anyone coming to this particular live broadcast. And I don't know why that happened, but it did. So I'm going to carry on because I want to create content for the Body, Mind, and Soul Show, pardon me. And so I'll wait to see if anyone at all was notified. I don't think so. There's no one coming in right now. Come in to chat if you're out there, if you're just viewing. If not, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create the content that I want to create. And if there's no one to respond to it, I'll link together the body show with this show edited. And I'll edit this down, including video and photographs and things to sort of embellish the topic. And then we'll see if anyone comes to the soul portion of the show, in which I do discussions about the occult as well as tarot readings. Oh, there is someone here. All right. My stroke recovery, my body, my choice. I'm here to listen and learn. Excellent. You might be the only one because of the glitch. I don't know if you heard me, but I had put in 7 p.m. and suddenly when I went back this afternoon, I came home a little late and I went to check on it. And it said 7 a.m. So I doubt very seriously many people are going to, because of that, be here. Well, hello, darling. Whispers in the wind. You're here too. Two's enough. I don't need more than that. I'll give you just a few more minutes and then I'll start my presentation. You're so sweet. I really do appreciate you very much. Whispers. I just like that name, Whispers. Can you hear me out there? Because my mic is a little bit, I don't have my mic stand with me today. Oh, you're so sweet. Can you hear me, Whispers? Can you hear me out there? Yes or no? Yes, it's loud and clear. Excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good, good. Wonderful. So it's a topic. Last week's topic was on aging and spiritualism. A serious topic, obviously not many people. Maybe I have a very young audience and they didn't see it as being as relevant to them as it is to me, and eventually will be relevant to everyone. But these topics are some of the most important things, I think, to do with our spiritual growth as a human being, as a member of a civilized society as well. So I'm very pleased to bring it to you. Now, the lady who mentioned that she's recovering from a stroke, this talk is not about the nutritional aspects of veganism. There's There's much information about that. In fact, what I would recommend you do is to watch a beautiful documentary called Forks Over Knives. In fact, I'll link it once we're finished with this. I'll link it with this video in the description box below it, because that video gives you all the nutritional reasons for going vegan. But this is about veganism and your spiritual well-being. And so I think very much relevant to you regardless, because disease is not just caused by malnourishment, but by spiritual, psychological starvation, shall we say. All right, so I'm going to begin, because I really don't think a lot of people are going to come today because of the little glitch. So what I've done is I've prepared some information about the subject, and I've included the writings of people I admire in the field of veganism and spirituality. I'd like to begin, first of all, by recommending a book called, and I'll again include this in the description box below, called Ethical Veganism by Carlo Alvaro. Carlo Alvaro is a philosopher teaching at the New York University of Technology, of all things. So what he does in his book is he brings together applied ethics and environmental philosophy. He covers bioethics and animal ethics. He states his argument for ethical veganism as being about having moral integrity to avoid harming or eating animals. To be moral in a society that has industrialized food manufacture and, in effect, systematically inflicts cruelty on animals on a scale that's almost unimaginable. To be moral has to do with exercising personal choice and refusing to become a part of this cruel system. Only by each of us individually exercising our moral choice and refusing to buy and to eat meat will this massive injustice and cruelty stop. You see, we are all complicit. Even though we may not be the ones who do the actual killing, the slaughterhouse may in fact be miles away from where you're dining. But the distance doesn't absolve your complicity. What we consume is a direct expression of the level of our justice, our compassion, and our temperance. If we have a dead animal on our dinner plate, we should ask ourselves, how did that animal suffer to make it onto our plate. You see, we don't need to eat meat to survive. I'm a living example of that. 67 years old, I haven't eaten meat since I was 14, and I don't ever get ill. Those who argue that we do need to eat animals, as with the argument that animals kill each other in the wild for food. I have a wonderful quote from Plutarch. Plutarch was a philosopher who was born in 46 AD in Greece. And he wrote a series of more than 60 essays on ethical, physical, political, and literary topics. Plutarch said, quote, "A human body is in no way resembles those that were born for ravenousness. Man has no hawk's beak, no sharp talons, no roughness of teeth, no strength of stomach or heat of digestion as can sufficient to convert or alter such heavy, fleshy fare. But if you contend that you were born to an inclination to such food as you have in mind to eat, do you then yourself kill what you would eat? Do you then yourself kill what you would eat? But do it yourself without the help of chopping knife, mallet, or axe, as wolves and bears and lions do, who kill and eat at once. Rend an ox with your teeth. Worry. Worry is the word that means to tear at, gone. Worry a hog. Tear a lamb or a hare in pieces, and then fall on it alive and eat it, as they do. But if that is too much for you, and you would rather wait till what you eat is dead, if you are loath to force a soul out of its body, why then do you, against nature, eat an animate thing? There are very few, if any, who is willing to eat even a lifeless and dead thing as it is. So they boil it, roast it, and alter it by fire and medicines, as it were, changing and quenching the slaughter gore with thousands of sweet sauces, that the palate, being thereby deceived, may admit of such uncouth fare. Let me just continue. The great writer, the great personage, Tagore, wrote. He was before I mentioned that, he was a worldwide literary legend, in fact. He was this on the same caliber as maybe Tolstoy or Goethe or even Victor Hugo. So he's extremely well respected. Wrote, "If only we do not allow our heart to grow callous, it protests against cruelty. Its protests against cruelty is always clearly heard. And yet, we go on perpetuating cruelties easily, merrily. All of us, in fact, anyone who does not join in this labeled a crank or strange, simply in order to join others preying upon life. By doing so, we insult all that is good within us." Albert Schweitzer, the great medical missionary and Nobel Prize winner and vegetarian, said it takes courage and compassion to turn away from eating meat. Until we extend the circle of our compassion to all living things, man will not himself find peace. So, hi there, everyone. Yes, hi. Well, there's a few more here. Isn't that nice? I'm doing very well. McKeebens and Makajo. So nice of you to join me. So that is how I'd just like to open it up. And if you have any comment, please do comment. But it's so interesting to me that we as a country here in America are relatively young, culturally young. And India, where yoga was born, is a very ancient culture. And they have had far more time to consider spiritual matters of consciousness. And there's a sect called Jainism. It's one of the oldest religions in the world. And they're vegan. And they prohibit the killing of animals. In fact, they go to such an extreme that even the bacterial and microscopic world is taken into account, and they try as best they can not to even harm those living phenomenon that they can't even see, but realize is there. That's the depth to which their concern, to which their compassion had evolved. I realize that Christianity really doesn't have a prohibition against killing animals. In fact, we are supposed to have dominion over the animals. And there are many people who are Christian who are vegetarian, but it isn't because the religion prescribes it. Islam also is a religion that doesn't have any prohibitions against killing animals. Perhaps they have prohibitions against how an animal is killed, so in a less cruel manner. But that religion also doesn't give you the the moral incentive to become vegan, to become totally non-violent. It's only those religions that are from the Far East that had evolved philosophically to include animals within the purview of what it is to be nonviolent. And so it's difficult, I believe, in our Western culture because we don't have the cultural imperatives towards it. And we are made to feel that it's too extreme, that it's that you're standing outside of the norm. So to adopt it as your as a spiritual foundation is really quite difficult, and I understand. My mother and father were meat eaters. Most of my friends, in fact, eat meat. And I never judge anyone for that. But I feel that the best way you can influence anyone is by example, by what you do and not what you say. You have to live your principles. And if you can live a life where you're not harming a living being, it creates within you such a sense of peace. Not only is the meat dangerous for you on a nutritional level because of all the it's almost again impossible for the body to digest it. It will digest it, but we don't have the intestinal we don't have a short intestine as do carnivorous animals where they can easily pass the meat through the body. We have a long intestinal tract, and the meat tends to putrefy and it becomes toxic. So on a purely nutritional level, it should never be eaten by human beings. Aesthetically, as Plutarch was saying, just because you've put sauces and spices and disguised it, it's still what it is. It's a piece of dead flesh, dead meat. It's not, you can't make it more than that by calling it ham or calling it by some other attractive name. It is what it is. And it's really quite, in my estimation, it's quite a disgusting habit that we've adopted in the West. Now, in the East, which is becoming more westernized, ironically, you can probably even find McDonald's over in India now, as you can practically everywhere in the world now. So they are, in a sense, have moved away from their own philosophical foundations. But it's not to say that that's right. It's just that there's a tendency from the East, Eastern philosophy to become more westernized. It's just the way it's evolving. But they're superior. The ancient philosophies were superior to us spiritually. They'd had thousands upon thousands of years to investigate the nature of consciousness. Let me see. That's right, Gandhi. Let me read that, because I was going to even include this particular quote, but I had so many others. Macado, if that's how you pronounce that. The greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way its animals are treated. Yes, his mother was a Jain. That's right. I've noticed in my relatively short lifespan, we only live to 80, 90 years old, that even within my lifespan, veganism has become immensely popular. It's one of the greatest activist movements in the world right now. So I have great hope for the future. And in so many places I've also seen, like for instance, I see animal hospitals where, even though it's become just as expensive to treat an animal, that we now give that kind of respect to our pets, our dogs, our cats, that we love them and know that they're sentient, that they have consciousness different from ours, but no less valuable, no less meaningful. Their life is as important to them as yours is to you. The problem becomes when we categorize some animals as livestock, and then we get to treat them very much like we used to treat slaves, as mere products, as utility for our nourishment, or just because we happen to like the taste of it. And this whole attitude, I think, is evolving, is gradually de-evolving as opposed to evolving. We'll move out of this soon enough, but it takes an individual to choose every single meal. The choice has to be made, the choice for life. Now, for instance, I love the analogy between what our attitude towards slavery used to be and our present attitude towards the animal kingdom. Because we used to believe that a slave, be they black or from whatever, there have been many races of slaves, but yes, here, the black man. It used to be that we thought that black people were not endowed with the same level of intelligence, or that their consciousness was on such a low level that it was almost equal then to an animal. And so that allowed us to exploit them, to use their physical energy, their mind, their skills for our own purposes. And we paid no attention to their own needs. This has only changed rather recently, by the way. It was this way until what? About 100 years ago or so, right? But it's changed rather dramatically from that. And so it gives me a great deal of hope that also our attitude towards the animal kingdom, we think that their intelligence, their consciousness is below ours. And so it gives us the right to exploit them. There's also another book. Actually, it's just an article, and it's called The Ubiquity of Consciousness, Cognition, and Intelligence in Life. The Ubiquity of Consciousness, Cognition, and Intelligence in Life. I'll also link that below. In the simplest sense, consciousness is an awareness of the outside world. However many definitions of consciousness and intelligence are inevitable, but they're inevitably anthropomorphic, meaning resembling man, and therefore hamper the efforts to see these qualities in other species. He's saying that our whole attitude about what is intelligent is anthropomorphic. We see it through our own eyes. We don't see it through the eyes of the animal. Lynn Margulis, the author of Endosymbiotic Theory. And endosymbiotic theory, it sounds complex, but it just means life living within life. Like we have bacteria living within us symbiotically. The theory of organelle evolution provides a more inclusive definition of consciousness and intelligence. Not just animals are conscious, but every organized being is conscious. In the simplest sense, consciousness is an awareness of the outside world. Similarly, there's a Chilean biologist and philosopher also named Maturana, who wrote, quote, "Living systems are cognitive systems, and living as a process is a process of cognition." So living as a process is a process of cognition. This statement is valid for all organisms with or without a nervous system. Which is a scary thought if you really understand what he's saying, because literally every biological system is conscious, meaning plants. So I'm a vegan. I eat plants, which I know are conscious. There's no doubt. I don't like to hide from the fact that plants are conscious as well. They assess their environment, they assess their own needs, and they make adjustments. They move. They literally move to adjust to their environment. They change themselves chemically in response to their environment. This is cognition. This is intelligence. In fact, there was a beautiful experiment in which I think the gentleman who conducted the experiment was a lie detector specialist. And he decided to put the lie detector nodes, you know, the ones that usually are put on our wrists and on sensitive areas of the body, that measure nervousness. He put them on plants. I think it was the philodendra, if I remember correctly. And the experiment was that he would come into the room, and he would have a knife with him. And when he came into the room, with no intent whatsoever to do any harm to the plants, but simply carried the knife into the room, the plants made no response. There was no difference in their bioelectric function. But when he walked into the room, carrying the knife, with the intention, the thought that he was going to harm the plants went into almost a state of nervous chaos. So even on the level of a plant, there's cognition, there's self-awareness, the awareness that I will be harmed, even though that I may not have the same qualities, ego qualities, that we assign our own I. Nonetheless, they're aware of themselves and want to protect their life. Now, what do we do with this knowledge? What do we eat? What can I eat knowing that a plant is also the same as any other living entity or being? Well, I happen to think that if we saw the sort of bell curve of human evolution, human conscious evolution, that eventually, give or take 100,000 years, that human beings will become breatharians. I think it was Rudolf Steiner who agreed with me on this, that the whole digestive system, our digestive system, will eventually disappear, and that we will be able to live on elements alone. I believe it because I see it as a spiritual evolution, evolving towards a state of total nonviolence, which I don't think we can achieve quite yet because we have to eat something, some living creature, plant. Oh my goodness, there's so many people. Hold on. I'm doing very well, Ira. Thank you. Yes. I'm glad you do agree with me, Makadua, that she or he, I'm not sure, have hope for the future too. Veganism has become very popular, especially in the past few years, thankfully. Yes, I think that's what's happening too. Akadel says, hopefully the love people show their pets will extend to all animals, or fellow earthlings, as I like to call them. That's it. Once you realize the emotional depth of your own pets, be they a dog, a cat, even birds, show enormous levels of empathy, compassion, and love. Once people really realize that animals are so close to them consciously, that it won't take too much longer for cows and chickens and sheep and the barn animals, as we used to call them, to be included in the circle of our compassion. Not too long from now, I don't think. So, hello, Cyborg. I'm still with you. Good. I'm glad. Poor little orchids. Yes. Well, that's true, isn't it? Yes, everything. It's interesting because I think that the next show that I'm going to do is going to be on crystals and their consciousness, crystal consciousness, because crystals are probably the most highly evolved of the mineral elements. They grow, they reproduce in effect, and they're almost like the just before the evolutionary step into the plant kingdom. And so they offer us human beings assistance, conscious assistance on a very elemental level. Crystals do. I teach yoga on a crystalline beach here in Siesta Key. It's 99% quartz crystal. That's where I do my yoga class. And the energy of the crystals is palpable. You can feel it. It radiates under you as if it had even heat. There's a property about it that's quite magical. So next time we'll even delve into the area of mineral consciousness, because everything really is conscious. Everything is conscious. And the realization that everything is conscious gives you a new level of respect for all the beings, all the life that exists around you. And again, that conscious awareness of the ubiquity, I guess it is, ubiquitousness of consciousness is soothing to the soul. You're not alone. You live in a almost as if you were immersed in a world of consciousness, conscious beings. It's quite beautiful, actually. And so I advocate everyone to at least try, maybe one day a week to begin, to go completely vegan. And then 2, 3, 4, and do it that way if you need to. I became a vegan because I personally witnessed with my own eyes the slaughter of animals. And it was so self-evident to me that those animals suffered pain and did not want to die. And so you're complicit in their death, even if you don't see it. Who was it? I think it was Paul McCartney might have said it, because he was a vegan, so was his wife, that if slaughterhouses had walls of glass, no one would eat meat. If you saw it, how could you possibly participate in it? So your animal oracle deck. I have an animal oracle deck too. So when we go into if you want a reading, as I said, the problem with this particular video was that there was the wrong time on it. So it wasn't, if people wanted a reading, they weren't given enough time to know when I was going to go live. Because it said 7 a.m. and it was 7 p.m. So I didn't notice it because I was out all day and I didn't come home till quite late. So I didn't notice it. And what I'll do once this phase, the mind, this is the body, mind, and soul show. I've already pre-recorded the body, which I will attach to this. Once I've edited this down as well, I'd like to add video to this and some pictorials to make it a little bit more graphic for you. Not in a bad sense, but to just make it more accessible to you visually. We're visual creatures. Then after this, I'll see if anyone wants a reading. That's how I want to do this body, mind, and soul show, is to divide them in separate areas, because I don't like it to overlap necessarily. It was confusing the first few times I tried it, where somebody wanted a reading and yet somebody else wanted to kind of talk about the topic. So that's how I'll do it from now on. Just kind of divide all three into their separate categories. So let me read, see if you have any comment, any questions, anything at all. I'm going to read your chats now, and you can offer it up. Garden plants from the north of England. Oh, that's cute. That's cute too. Again, macadol, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I'll try. I rationalize eating fruits and vegetables because they don't run away or fight back when I chop them. But looking forward to breatharian society. Wouldn't that be nice? Cheaper too, wouldn't it? A lot cheaper. Yeah, no, there was a guru, and I don't remember maybe which one it was, but I do remember the quote, because vegans and vegetarians are always asked about the idea of plants having consciousness and feeling pain and not wanting to die. And so how does a vegetarian defend their eating those beings? And the quote was, he was asked the question and he said, well, the reason I eat plants is because I don't hear them scream. In other words, by that, he wasn't being insensitive. What he was doing was, in a very simple way, expressing the idea that they may indeed suffer, but that suffering is below the level of our immediate perception. With our 5 senses, we cannot perceive their suffering. So there is almost a natural order to this life feeding on life. There are animals that feed on each other, whose consciousness is at a level where they use each other's body, but it's not immoral, because it's not done from anger. It's not done from indifference or just because they like the taste. It's done because that's the level of their conscious evolution. And we as human beings, at least now, are not consciously, sensorially aware of the suffering of a plant when we chop it up. Though I know it does suffer. No doubt. No doubt. In fact, come to think of it, there's something called swarm intelligence. In other words, like a beehive or a anthill, where the individuals that belong to that community are sort of like the cells of a brain. Each portion of that swarm intelligence has a function. And for instance, when the scouts in an ant community go out to find a place for their new anthill, they assess the entire geometrical capacity of the new interior landscape, and how many entrances there are, how close or far away it is from food source. They go back to their hive, they distribute that information, and that information is then decided upon as a group. They assess intellectually whether that new place would suit them, whether it was good for their survival. They make an intelligent decision as a whole, as do bee hives also act intelligently as a community. So intelligence, really, again, we can't see it anthropomorphically just through the eyes of the human being, but we'd have to see intelligence on the level of the animal itself. In their world, how is that intelligence exhibited? And then we can measure the various levels of intelligence in these creatures. But it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere. All creatures share in some level of intelligence or consciousness. Good, I'm glad you agree. So, this is interesting. Plants have human, insect, animal host gene. Yes. Garden plants. That's interesting that you would have that name, garden plants. You have plants and trees growing in your garden of which you did not plant yourself, such as a rowan tree or a goat willow tree. Isn't that a goat willow? I wonder what that looks like, a goat willow tree. Sounds interesting. Yes, sometimes plants can communicate at a distance, and they'll know through, again, networking conditions in far away places, and so they can decide in which direction they're going to propagate. It's really quite fascinating. I'll include maybe some video about that when I edit this show together, and then I'll present it, I'll premiere it so that you can make sure that you see it when it includes video. I can't do that. I guess I'm just not skilled enough with live broadcasting yet to be able to do it right now. So I'll do it later. Ayahuasca is a divine plant. I was just having a conversation about ayahuasca today with a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist, and we had a fairly in-depth conversation about it. Apparently, in Europe, and I guess in South America, in Peru, they use ayahuasca to treat depression and dementia, and have had enormous success with it, meaning that they've only had to treat someone with maybe 2 or 3 of these ayahuasca trips, particularly effective if there's a schooled shaman with them. But some plants, if not all, work exceedingly well with human consciousness. That's why most of the pharmaceutical remedies originated from herbs, from plants. They've been synthesized in order to become marketable, but they originate from the plants. And marijuana, now becoming more legal all over America, has enormous health benefits. I just read an article just recently, came through, that they're using it now in the treatment of some cancers, and having, and this is from mainstream science, by the way. So yes, another thing occurred to me as well. Feral Fulfa. Hello. In the works of Jane Roberts, Seth speaks, those channeled works where she spoke the words from an entity that was not incarnate, not within the body. It was such an interesting body of work. I'll have to introduce that to you sometime in the future. But one of the things that came to mind was he mentioned, as a sort of prognostication into the future of human evolution, is that we are going to be able to find various plants that will help us to evolve as a species. Psychotropic drugs that will be derived from these plants will help us almost travel into sort of like dream art scientists, where we use the drug to actually move into a whole different dimension of reality, and we can learn the knowledge that exists there and bring it back. Sort of like an astronaut, only it's sort of like an intronaut, going inwards, because really the only true space is not out there, but it's in here. It's inside of you. There are more complex universes within you than anywhere you'd find on the outside world, in the material world. And plants, there will be discovered various plants that will help us to accelerate our own evolution so that we can become much more facile, traveling to these various inner dimensions. It will help to enrich our world out here. We could even bring back technological advances as well as advances in health and in cultural cooperation. Those kinds of wisdom or information resides within us. And there have been a few very brave scientists. I was just thinking of one. I wonder if anybody could remember the gentleman who studied dolphins and took a lot of acid. I just can't remember his name, but he was one of the pioneers in sort of researching animal consciousness. Can't remember his name right now, because I don't have it down here either. Yes, well, ayahuasca is that, but it isn't that, because an ayahuasca trip, shall we say, does have curative effects for us psychologically. Definitely it does. It sort of helps us to kind of reset, reprogram, especially if we've suffered from any deep trauma from childhood. My psychiatrist friend was telling me about that it allows a person to sort of witness themselves without becoming lost in themselves, and to see themselves sort of separately, and to make the assessment of what is wrong, what went wrong with their psychology, what went wrong with their thinking, and it corrects it so quickly. But ayahuasca doesn't have the same multi-dimensionality to it that I've heard other drugs do have. Every one of these drugs is a sort of its own character. If we wouldn't be so afraid of them or put social stigmas on them, I think we could make much more advancements in research. Again, another stage of evolution culturally that we have to get to. 10-hour travel by ayahuasca. Well, yes, and there are people who have had negative experiences with it, of course. My psychiatrist friend told me about that too, who have lived a life so regimented, so unfamiliar with their own inner spirituality, that when they're confronted with it, it almost terrifies them. And they can have a very bad trip, as we used to say in my era. But nonetheless, there's a conference that takes place in Peru that many renowned psychiatrists attend every year. So little by little, things are changing. I think Raphael, flat plane, Sanchez, you're a flat earther, are you? Yeah. You know that ancient Egypt, where practically all our uh, philosophical and even religious uh, streams have come from, were flat earthers. So you're in good company, my dear. You're in good company. Yes, you are. You too. What? We have an entire crew of flat earthers here. Good. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It makes well. It's not only does it make more scientific sense, but it makes more spiritual sense as well, because then we become the focus of the entire cosmos. Everything revolves around us. And um, I'm going to finish reading the Hermetica, the Lost Wisdom of the Ancient Pharaohs, but in there um, it states that there's a spiritual hierarchy, and God, of course, being the creator of all things, is the most uh, high. Then underneath that is the cosmos. The cosmos, again, having consciousness. It's not an inert, dead thing. It's conscious. It is what God created. But then right after that is man. And it gives a sort of dignity and respect to humanity that science, with its heliocentric, Big Bang, random model, has taken away from us. And quite mistakenly. And I think that we are in this stage, both the vegan revolution and the flat earth revolution are sort of, it's interesting that they both sort of emerged simultaneously because they are linked. It's all about consciousness, being aware that everything is conscious, that the world is conscious, and that the idea that this plane of existence is really our theater in which consciousness grows, is tested, and it really is like a stage when you see it that way. A stage where we perform. I think Shakespeare was right that all the world's a stage and that we're just performers coming in and out. We take a role and we leave and we learn by it. And so we are the cosmos. Yes, 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 yes. Freudian philosophy could be the root of fear. That's interesting. I read Freud when I was in my early 20s, and I was just trying to figure things out, at that stage in my life when I was 20. And I realized that he came from a point in history in which the mind, psychology, the whole idea of consciousness wasn't really fitting into the entire mechanistic view that was evolving at the same time, coming with the Industrial Revolution and with the whole heliocentric model and science being that everything is mechanical, the whole Newtonian idea of a mechanical universe, everything functioning like a well-tuned clock. So consciousness itself had to be legitimized scientifically. So there was a sort of mechanistic, a mechanization of consciousness. So Freud and then the behaviorists who then saw us as nothing but a product of our programming, our behaviors, became sort of the foundation of the whole psychological movement that Freud. Now I credit Freud with at least taking consciousness seriously. Now, he was one of the first ones, but that was the first baby step, in my opinion. Maslow, yeah. Well, Jung later on too took it another step further, thankfully. So there again, we're evolving, we're moving forward. I have great hope. I know that it's almost as if we're moving at a sort of supersonic speed suddenly. Because when I was young, see, I've been a vegetarian since I was 14 years old, and then I became a vegan later on. But since I was 14, I was in a kind of desert of vegan options when I was younger. There was nothing. I had to invent it myself. I didn't know what to eat, how to eat. I had no idea. All I knew is I wasn't going to eat any animals. That's for sure. What I was actually going to eat was the problem. And I was young. I was living in Manhattan. I didn't have a lot of time to eat. So you don't eat well just because you're a vegan. It takes a lot of time to figure out what foods are going to give you the best nourishment. It's true. But I always felt well. If I had any problems with preparing a meal, all I would do is go out and get a salad, or I'd get a bag of fruit and I would eat the fruit, and I wouldn't bother about anything. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it, until recently. Now you go into any store and there's pre-made food for you, all vegan sections, organic, everything. It's marvelous. If you're younger and this is just normal for you, it wasn't that way before, believe me. It was sad. And and being a vegetarian when I was younger, I'd constantly have to be defending myself for my choices and the ridicule that probably comes to the poor flat earthers out there as well. Yes. So Raphael Flatplane Sanchez, yes, it does. I've been vegan for a year now. The first 6 months were the hardest, but now I can do it all. I know what to eat and when to eat. Yes. Well, I've been a vegan. I'm 67, so I've had a lot of experience, and it's never the same for me. I mean, sometimes I'm hungry, and sometimes I'm not. So sometimes I will eat a lot in one day, like I graze, constantly. going to the refrigerator to get snacks of some sort. And other days, I have no interest in food whatsoever. None. In fact, I feel sometimes frustrated because I have to eat. I don't like it. It's like a duty almost. Why do I have to eat again? What am I going to eat? Drives me crazy. So I really don't know if perhaps some of you are much more regulated in it than I am. But every day is a new day for me. Who knows what I'm going to eat? Yes, ridicule for flat earthers. Yes. It's because it's equated with, oh, living in a sort of medieval philosophy. That's basically how people think. If you think that the earth is a plane level stationary entity, well, it's so outside of the scientific mainstream, and science now is really the measure of one's sort of intelligence, how you accept the doctrines and dictates of science is supposed to be some sort of clue as to how intelligent you are. And I'm telling you, science is so wrong on so many things that you can't even begin to make that list. And the greatest scientists, the ones that I admire, are the most humble in their acceptance of the fact that they really don't know. It's their best guess. And yes, there are some sort of irrefutable things they all agree on. Laws, they call them. Second law of thermodynamics and things like that are pretty much standard. And the fact that water boils at a certain temperature, these kinds of things are concluded forever. But the rest of it, it's up for grabs. And it's quite an interesting world that academia lives in. It's a very competitive world, very sort of almost incestuous. Sort of only discussing things that they agree on. I think any kind of real radical thought is not accepted in the scientific community. Yeah, people are sleeping. That's true. Dr. Sebi. Yeah, that's true. Sebi was an interesting character, wasn't he? An interesting demise as well. These people have also interesting ways of dying. So yeah, his alkaline diet. My alkaline kitchen was a sort of a tribute to Dr. Sebi. I like the choices that he prescribed. He visited Africa, many times, and learned a great deal about food, natural food, how to eat naturally from the native people. Those who had retained their native, more aboriginal, I guess, cultural qualities. So I enjoyed watching Sebi very much when he was alive, and I it broke my heart when when he died. They say he was killed. So yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think so too. It's too dangerous, because he was the one who won a court case in which he was allowed to proclaim the curative benefits of food, and he won that. I think in New York is where he won it. So he had a sort of national notoriety for that reason. So they knew him. That's for sure. They knew him. When was I in Manhattan during when? I don't know what you mean. I do remember the court case. No, I wasn't. No, no, no. I don't remember it by being there. I don't remember it. I don't know if I lived in Manhattan when that was taking place because I don't remember what year that was. I lived in Manhattan from 70 to 76, and then I went back and lived in Manhattan in 86. I believe it was 1986. So I don't think so. 87 was the case, so I wasn't there. I wasn't there. Hello, Mr. Mensa. Nice to see you. Hello. Yeah, there was some kind of glitch on the announcement for the show. I have to figure things out. I'm not very technically proficient. Yes, it was an astounding case, and it put him on the map. Is what it did. It put him on the map, and many of the sort of the underground black movement in uh, in Manhattan followed him and his diet. So he was very popular. In fact, I think he lived in Honduras. Was it Honduras? Was he had a compound there where he grew his plants and treated people? Because he was killed in South America, as far as I understand. Yes, Honduras. That's it, and Ecuador too. Yeah, yeah. In fact, while he was alive, I was thinking of going there. I was really. I remember having the plan in mind, and then he died. So I never really got to go, and I was so looking forward to. I think he was giving some kind of course there. I would have loved to have studied under him. Yep, yep, yeah, yeah. Me too. I would have loved to see. Last week or whenever it was that I did the aging and spiritualism. I sort of hinted at the idea that it would be so wonderful if we had a place, a community, a retirement community where after we're done with having to make a living, contributing to society, where we could live in a community of high-minded individuals who had shared principles of veganism and nonviolence and in that previous talk that I did on aging, I mentioned that as we get older, ideally, if we were allowed to be ourselves, to let the aging process occur naturally, that we would grow younger as we aged. We'd be allowed to grow younger as we age. Can you imagine being in a community where everything was based on a vegetarian diet, the best food in the world, nonviolent, where people were allowed to express the child within them, which is what happens when you get older, is the body and the things of life that mattered before become less important. And what becomes important is the joy of living, the joy of breathing, the joy of seeing the beauty of nature, and of just having fun. That's what aging really should be about. So someday, if I ever have anything to say about it, that's what I would do. Utopia. No, it can happen. It's not that far-fetched. There have been utopians, people who have created their own sort of world, utopian world. It's happened many times before, where people get together and sort of insist on creating their own culture. In fact, that's what sort of what you'd call monasteries were all about to begin with, is to separate yourself from the rest of the world and to live in a community of high-minded individuals. It's not impossible. It's been done many times historically. All's good with me, Mr. Vince. I hope you're... Is it getting colder there in England? Oh, freezing yet? This was actually, today was the first day in which I felt just an inkling of autumn coming, because this is Florida, and when it's 85 degrees, it feels cooler. So it's about 85 degrees today, and it was really nice and cool. Like a collective group, yes, we all agree. That's it. That's all it takes is agreement. Many things can be done once you agree. Rain and windy, see? Knew it. Yes. And there's something nice about that too. You have to get cozy, with your kitty cat, huh, Mr. Mensa? No, the hurricane completely missed us. So I've stocked up on water and gasoline, which will last me another 2 weeks now. So no, it went the other way. And it's usually that here in Sarasota, we have a kind of buffer, a kind of magnetic buffer zone right here. And it's rare that any hurricane even brushes up against us, as it did about 2 years ago. But even that was only a category 2. And so, no, this area is pretty safe for Florida, right here in Sarasota. You did? You lived in Naples? Yeah, it's not far. It's the same climate, same thing. 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Thank you for the Fahrenheit. All right. Yeah. So yes. All right. So I think that's it. Did I what I'm going to do again when I edit this portion is I'm going to add video and visuals, so to make it more like a story, and then I'll premiere it for everyone. So yes, I've been going since 7, so it's 8:30, an hour and a half. My God, it's because I love you all. Thank you for coming. You're so sweet. Thank you. Now, what I thought to do to make this like a definitive line between the shows is if anyone wants a reading by donation of any amount, that you can do that in the soul portion of this show, which will begin after I pause this show. And then we will be able to start it up again when I go into another room and sort of like my inner sanctum and change the mood a bit. And if anyone wants a reading, they can get a reading there. And if not, then I'll close up the temple. And next time we come together, I think it is the idea of the mineral world, the consciousness of the mineral world. The ring I have, I don't know if you can see it. See that? That's garnet. It's a really pretty ring. It was my mother's. The garnet being sort of the color of the earth itself. It's a very deep, more the color of the first chakra, the lower chakra, the one that's closest to the earth. It grounds you, and it gives you a sense of being very able to manage the sort of the fluctuations of life. So each crystal has a conscious quality, just like a plant relates to us on a chemical level, changing us, helping us to become more healthy or to become more conscious. So do crystals do the same thing. So we're going to investigate the various crystals, their properties, and their consciousness. So I hope that it will be of interest to you as well. And that's it. I just don't know. Let me see. Send feedback. Edit stream. I'm looking at I don't want to end the stream. I want to pause it. So maybe if I end it, I'd have to start a new one. But in any event, I'll stop soon here, and then I'll start again and go into, again, my inner sanctum, and I'll do some readings for you if you'd like any, if anyone wants it. If not, then that'll be it for the evening. So thank you everyone for joining me. I love you very much for coming, and I'll do better with my posting of these live chats so that you'll know when to come in. And so, namaste, all my love. Sweet. See you in the tarot room. Bye bye. Or maybe I'll just. Ta-da! So.